Welcome into the Full Tilt Devy podcast on the Full Tilt Dynasty network of podcasts. You'll notice I'm not behind the scenes today. I'm up front with my good friend here, Andy Starr, and we're going to be doing our best to fill in for John Arrington, or at least I'm going to be trying to do my best to fill in for John. Y'all will be hearing me a little bit more than usual for our Devy show, but I'll do my best. And man, we have college football again. How was your weekend, Andy?
My weekend was great. Labor Day weekend, we got like a little music festival here called Arts Beats and Eats. They
Oh,
usually play
nice.
like bands from the '90s who are no longer good anymore, uh, but they're still great. So like 311 played, which I don't know if anyone here is a 311 fan, but I like them. I was pretty pumped about that.
Oh, nice, nice. I'm assuming you watch plenty of college football.
I did watch a lot of college football. A lot of great stuff. A lot of great stuff to talk about. Some injuries, some people stepping up, some people stepping down. Great things week one. You love to see it.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was a little surprised about just how uncrisp it felt like everybody was playing on Saturday. Just every single game I watched, just nobody looked like they were fully just running on all cylinders. To say, I was expecting something a little bit more smooth, but maybe it's just I forgot what week one's like. It has been a full year since we've got week one football, and we're getting some more week one football tonight with the Rams and Bills playing. So be trying
I
to
know.
give this full
I know.
attention, but I got
I
mine
know.
right here.
That's the thing. Like even the NCAA was smart enough to not put a game on tonight to go against like the biggest ratings giant in the world. But we were stupid enough to try and go up against it. So
You know, we're going to pull ratings from the NFL tonight. That's my goal. Let's do that. We'll get
we'll
some
get we'll
viewers
get
in
we'll
here.
get one guy in here for sure.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I won't waste too much time. We'll get into it. Some news and notes from week one. Lots of injuries. It doesn't seem like anything too serious, but still some things that we need to know. So, what injury stood out to you the most, Andy?
Yeah, so a little bit of a surprise for a lot of C2C players like myself was Josh Downs not playing last week. Uh, he actually injured his knee during the Week 0 game against Florida A&M on a touchdown catch. He was able to play out that game, but was kept out of last week's shootout against App State. Currently listed as a game time decision, according to head coach Mac Brown. However, anytime it was a knee injury, by the way. So anytime you hear the words knee and injury in the same sentence, it's usually a multiple week injury. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Doesn't sound like there's any structural damage based on the language of the UNC coaching staff. It's really tough to get anything definitive out of the NCAA. They don't have to disclose injuries like in the NFL. As of right now, I'm not really concerned at all. I believe they get Georgia State this week, so I wouldn't really expect him to play again. He may, but like I said, game time decision, Georgia State. I think UNC is a touchdown favorite, so maybe they play him, but my guess is they hold him out another week here.
My biggest concern is that this is valuable time that he could be using to establish a better connection with Drake May early on in the season. So that's something that I'd wished to see more, especially as they start getting into ACC play. Maybe they're, as we saw for most teams in week one, maybe they're just not as crisp, not as in tune whenever he comes back. But it doesn't seem to be hurting his draft stock. Bleacher Report just put out their most recent mock draft episode or article for the season, and they still have Josh Downs as a first round projected pick. So we'll see. As long as he can play again this season, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think he will play again. And his absence didn't seem to hinder that offense at all last week. They put up over 60 points. Obviously, it was just a wild game.
Such a fun
So
game, though.
it was fun. Sorry if you're an App State fan. That was a pretty brutal loss. If you put up 40 points in the fourth quarter and still take the L, but yeah, we want to see him back. We love Josh Downs. He's a great slot receiver. We want him back as soon as possible.
So there's another first round projected receiver that's dealing with injury issues as well, and that's JSN. So I haven't seen a lot about that injury. It's just kind of with all the craziness that was happening on Saturday, didn't get to see as much of the Notre Dame Ohio State game as I really wanted to. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, not really the game he was wanting or anybody was really wanting, especially if you have them on your Devy rosters.
Yeah, so obviously he got hurt first quarter injury against Notre Dame. He got up limping on the sideline. Preliminary reports were calling it a hamstring injury. So obviously, soft tissue injuries tend to linger a little bit. I would say it seems inevitable. He's going to sit out this week. They play Arkansas State, which they should have no problem beating them. And I would think he's probably going to sit against Toledo in 2 weeks as well. Since again, that's a game that Ohio State's not really in any risk of losing. I would look for him to be back against Wisconsin at home on September 24th. But in the meantime, this does create an opportunity for Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. to establish themselves as the wide receiver 2 in this offense. Egbuka took over last week. We'll see if he can keep it up again. He has, in my opinion, always been the better out of those two sophomores. I know a lot of people think Marvin Harrison is the better of the two. So personally, I can't wait to see more out of that offense. And honestly, it was kind of, we'll talk more about it, later in the show, but that was a bit of a disappointment from the Ohio State offense as a whole. I know they do have issues, at least last year, starting out the season, firing on all cylinders. So we'll see if they can pick it up as we move on here.
So who do you think has the most to gain from the injury? I know you mentioned that you don't have Marvin Harrison Jr. as high. I know a lot of us more casual fans, we saw him in prime time going up against Utah in the Rose Bowl and just putting on an absolute show out there. Is fantastic to watch. But where do you see the most opportunity coming?
I think it is for Egbuka because Marvin Harrison right now is the higher Devy and C2C rated asset. So I think if Egbuka goes out there and shows, hey, look at me, I'm the wide receiver 1 when JSN's not here, that's going to bump his stock up. Not that, his stock is down right now. He's still a 3rd or 4th round startup pick during the offseason. So, but if he was like 9 catches, 90 some yards last week, if he does anything like that again, scores some touchdowns, whatever, and he outplays Marvin Harrison, I think, that's stock up for him, and he might end up jumping Marvin Harrison in our rankings.
Right, so moving on to a little bit more positive news here on the injury front, and that is Wake Forest quarterback Sam Hartman having a procedure done to remove a blood clot. I haven't seen what the timetable is, but I do know he is able to return to the team. As far as what activities can do, only time will tell. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, so they classified as a non-football injury. I know John and I talked about it last week, or not last week, a few episodes ago. As to what that might mean, whether it's some sort of medical diagnosis or what. And obviously we did get some clarity, and the team acknowledged that it's something called Paget-Schroeder syndrome, which causes blood clots during strenuous activity. But it's obviously, it seems like the medical professionals feel that he's okay to play it. And I read that he's actually going to be starting this week.
Wow.
So if that's the case, it's great news for guys like A.T. Perry and Donovan Green, and that whole offense. So, they played against FCS opponent last week, but with their quarterback Mitch Griffiths, who played fine. But yeah, Sam Hartman is all-American level quarterback. So you get him back, it obviously changes the entire offense.
Yeah, and they get another FCS opponent this week in Vanderbilt, so that should be pretty good for him.
Right.
So I have to throw in a solid dick to Vanderbilt. We'll move on from it, though.
Don't worry, I'll be digging Vanderbilt as a lot here
nice.
Throughout the episode, because I think they're on a bit of a high horse here with the last couple of weeks. But yeah. I'm just to clarify, I'm looking at ESPN right now. Sam Hartman is cleared to play following the blood clot issue, so he will be starting.
I'm just happy I don't have to hear Derek Mason talking about the school in the East anymore. So happy we're done with that. And now moving on from injuries, but got some other news that came out of week one, and that's Keishon Bude.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what a heartbreaking week for LSU, but then all the drama surrounding him immediately after the game. Apparently, even butting heads more with Brian Kelly. Where you see that going? Because he's either the wide receiver 1 or 2 in most Devy startups right now.
Right.
The Bleacher Report mock draft that I was talking about, they had him as the wide receiver 1 off the board. I mean, he has maybe unparalleled athletic ability from this wide receiver class, but it's been tough getting to see any of it on the field recently.
Definitely. Yeah, he was obviously frustrated with the offense last week, just given his body language on the field. And then, like you mentioned, he scrubbed his social media of all things LSU after the game. I will say that Malik Neighbors and a few others did this as well with their social media accounts. As far as like his performance in the game, he did lead the team in targets, but he was only able. There was only 6 targets, by the way. He only mustered 2 catches on those, and also registered 2 drops. And then, like you said, it was a heartbreaking loss. They were extra point away from sending them to overtime. Brian Kelly did address the situation earlier this week, stating that the players were disappointed in themselves, not necessarily in the offense or the play calling. He said he talked with Butte, and he seemed confident that he will be having big games this season. He also acknowledged that there may have been some injury rust, and also said that he's the guy that concerns him the least about the offense. So he's not worried about Butte moving forward. I don't know. That's obviously could be coach speak. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We obviously need to see more. They
Mhm.
get a much easier game this week against Southern, which is an FCS opponent. We'll see if there's a bounce back. I'm not confident, given the way that Jaden Daniels plays QB. He's kind of looking to run first, it feels like. But if there was ever a get right week, I think this needs to be it.
Yeah, I was surprised with how Jaden Daniels plays. I was really expecting him to perform better, just because Brian Kelly's had fairly good history with quarterbacks, and he was very productive out of Arizona State. But it just didn't come together the way I was really wanting to watching that game Monday night.
Yeah. So for sure. And, like I said, Malik Neighbors had his issues too. Brian Thomas also played well for that team. It's just, I think the whole offense just needs to kind of get the train back on the tracks, so to speak, against Southern, and get this offense clicking again, because whatever Florida State was doing to him last week, it really, got into their heads, and they really couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I was not expecting Florida State to play that well, honestly. And I don't know if it was more Florida State was playing really well or if LSU was just beating themselves. But yeah, that was one of the big surprises for me from week one, to say the least. I know it's not our show sheet, but
I
I
would
want to get your opinion real quick. Oh, go ahead.
real quick. John and I did the Brian Kelly over and under game earlier in the season, or earlier in the off season, and I took the under for LSU wins, and I had actually given them this Florida State as a win. So that bet's looking pretty good right now if you did take the under for LSU win total.
Yeah, it's tough to bet against Brian Kelly and LSU, but yeah, that's looking really good right now. So, what was your favorite game from week one?
My favorite game was I mean, we already talked about it. It was the UNC App State. I love scoring in college football, and a game like that where it's just one possession after the other, touchdown, touchdown. That's where I'm at. My other option would be Wisconsin, just because that's my team. They ended up winning 38-0. Braylon Allen looked really good, and even Graham Mertz had a decent enough game. So, but those are the two that stood out for me. There's a ton of great games though. I mean, Notre Dame, Ohio State was a great game. The well, not Georgia versus Oregon, but Florida versus Utah was a great game.
Mhm.
So we're gonna get more of that this week, which I'm pretty pumped about.
I was very excited to see my Vols just handle business. That like I was saying about just wanting to see crispness, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more chemistry between him and Hooker and Cedric Tillman in particular, but just their whole wide receivers just in general. I mean, way that offense works, they like to take a bunch of shots, so maybe they'll hit a couple more of them this week against Pitt. But my other favorite game was the Virginia Tech Old Dominion game. And that's just
Oh yeah.
because of where I live now. Whenever I first moved into the Virginia area, I was surrounded by Hokies. I work with Hokies. I mean, it's Hokie Nation around here. And I got made fun of a lot because my first year up here, Tennessee lost to Georgia Southern. Uh, or is it Georgia State? I don't know. One of those Georgia teams, and it was rough. So I'm having a lot of fun right now. It's good times. Good times all the way around.
Yeah, don't sleep on Old Dominion. They're 2-2 against Virginia Tech now.
Stop traveling to Old Dominion to play them. That's all I can say.
Right.
We're going to take a break real quick here, and then whenever we come back, we're going to talk about Week 1 winners and losers. So hang tight.
Whoever is the quarterback for the Steelers is going to be valuable so long as they're the quarterback for the Steelers. Like Trubisky, we saw him 2 years ago play at the caliber of a very, very good quarterback. I rode him to a fantasy championship. Like he ran through stretches of game where he was maintaining that fantasy relevant QB situation, all while dealing with Matt Nagy's offense.
That is from our Tuesday show. Absolutely great episode, chock full of information about what to expect during Week 1. A lot of talk about the game that's going on right now. And if you listen to them, they were warning you all. They were warning everyone about what was going to happen on this game, and we'll get to those clips later. But back to college football. Reason that we're here tonight, and our Week 1 winners and losers. There were a lot of them, but we're just going to narrow down some of our favorites. So, who was one of your winners from Week 1?
So my first winner is Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama. I think entering the season, most would argue that the 2023 QB1 race had two favorites, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. And I think Young just gave himself a big early advantage. I will say his accuracy, they played against Utah State, by the way. His accuracy last week was less than ideal. His adjusted completion percentage is only at 66.7. But he did show us his rushing ability, which we knew he had, but he never really put it on display in 2021. So last week he ran for 107 yards and a touchdown, including a 63-yard scramble. In 2021, he only had 3 games where he ran for more than 10 yards. So it was nice to see him flex that ability a little bit. Like I said, which he did do a lot in high school. So, that's obviously we'd love to see that for fantasy purposes. And, he's coming off a Heisman season. So now he's running the ball. That's awesome.
I'm seeing a lot of Russell Wilson comps just in terms of their game. Are you buying that, or are people just hanging on to that straw because he's a smaller quarterback who has some rushing ability, but he's not quite to Kyler level?
Yeah, I think that's like you said, that's a pretty fair comparison. I think Russell Wilson's much more accurate than Bryce Young was or is. But they are, similar in that aspect where they're, undersized as far as a QB and can still, make up there for that with their running ability.
I know it's Week 1, but does that make you feel any better about his prospects long term, being able to see that athleticism on full display?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was pumped for it because, like I said, when he was coming out of high school, we knew that he could do that. And then last year, he had several games where he had negative rushing yards. Granted, that was because of like sack yardage or whatever. But now he's, he put it on display a little bit. I don't know if he's going to keep doing that. It was a Utah State game, but we'll see.
Awesome. So my Week 1 winner was Anthony Richardson for Florida. If you follow any of us on Twitter, especially Tom Tipple, he's having a lot of fun with Anthony Richardson right now, especially with John Arrington at Dynasty Coach A on Twitter. They were tweeting some just madness this weekend about Anthony Richardson in the the display he put on against Utah. I mean, that was just showcasing that sort of rushing ability against what was supposed to be a really good Utah run defense. That was very impressive. I'm only slightly worried as a Tennessee fan, not completely worried yet. We'll see how he handles against Kentucky. My hope is that we all just had higher expectations for Utah than they actually can handle. But yeah, Anthony Richardson, huge winner for week one. He's definitely sneaking up higher and higher into the round one conversation in terms of next year's draft. So what did you think of his week one performance?
First of all, the ridiculous highlight where he did like the pump fake 360 and then tossed the touchdown. That was awesome. That was really cool. I will say, as a passer, he didn't really show us much more than what he's already showed us. I think he only had I don't think he had any targets further than 20 yards downfield. So there's that concern still. I'm not saying, this guy's awful, but yeah, I would temper my enthusiasm a bit on him. But he's definitely one of the best in the country. There's no denying that, if not the best. So he's definitely going to find himself on an NFL roster next year. There's no denying that.
Oh, definitely. Onto some losers. You have another player here who I was surprised that you put him as a loser for week one. But give us your first loser.
I went with CJ Stroud, just going on the other side of the coin of the QB battle here. He obviously lost JSN in the first quarter, which we already talked about. But when you're in the conversation, for QB1 and Heisman favorite, I think you need to be able to adapt a little bit. His yards per attempt was not great at all at 6.6. ADOT was under 10. Shout out to the Notre Dame defense for playing a great game, keeping their offense within striking distance the whole time. I know I thought this game was going to look a lot different. I thought Ohio State was going to be angry this year, after kind of having a disappointing season last year and losing to Michigan. Stroud had a slow start last year too, before turning it up in the Big Ten schedule. So I don't know if it's going to be that way this year as well. So I don't, like I said, I'm not saying it's time to anoint Young as the QB1 yet, but like I said, Young definitely starts up with the leg up here, and Stroud definitely has some things to work on.
So we've already mentioned the top two quarterbacks, presumably for next year's draft. And does it make you feel better or worse about what that quarterback class is going to look like? I think there were 6 quarterbacks listed in the round one mock draft that Bleacher. I'm going to keep throwing it out there. I read it today, so yeah, I got caught up in it.
No, that's fine.
There's 6 quarterbacks listed in that first round. So hypothetically, it's a really deep draft at quarterback. Now, in terms of the quality, how safe we feel about all of them, I know Tom's brought up several times he's not convinced that the 2023 class is this magnificent quarterback class that people have been thinking it's going to be for the last 2 years. So where are you kind of feeling about that now after seeing what's happened in week one?
No, I agree with Tom, and I've always been on that same page. Like, I've thought Bryce Young and CJ Stroud have kind of cemented themselves as first round picks as long as nothing catastrophic happens. But, looking at those mock drafts, you had guys like Will Levis and, Anthony Richardson, like we already talked about. Trying to think of who else has been
the quarterback
listed
from Miami.
Tyler Van Dyke, Van Dyke had a good game last week, so he didn't really do anything to hurt his stock. But Levis didn't really look that great. Like I said, John loves Tyler Van Dyke. I'm not really that high on him. I've just been kind of trepidatious on quarterbacks altogether and trying to really evaluate them unless they're like a sure thing, which is, kind of how I feel about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Like, once I can say kind of confidently that they're a first round pick, then, I'm comfortable taking them. But even we've seen that doesn't always go to plan either with Sam Howell last year. Like, everyone was sure he was a top 10 draft pick up until like 3 months before the draft. And now he's a 5th round draft pick. So things can turn sour with NFL, scouts and QBs. So Yeah, I don't think 6 QBs are going to be in the first round, but at the same time, maybe there will be. I don't know.
Or there could only be one like this year. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, as somebody who has a lot of 2023 picks in his dynasty leagues because I have fun acquiring more draft picks and not being good, especially in free leagues. I've been looking at this 2023 class and I've kind of been pigeonholed at least one pick for a quarterback on most of those teams just because it's really tough. Unless the quarterback's just, I mean, the worst thing that we've ever seen, it's hard for them to lose value once you draft them. But I mean, I'm starting to lean more towards going after one of these running backs or even trading back into 2024 more, just so I can have 4 of those picks. Uh, I I would
Just
like
keep kicking the can down the road.
exactly. You just perennially suck and get a lot more draft picks, and it's fun. That's
Right.
that's the way I like to play, for better or worse. If this was the walkabout or our main show, I wouldn't talk about how bad my teams are. But this is the Devy show, and we like to talk about prospects. I like to look at prospects, so it is all fine. I would like to feel a lot like I'd like to get a lot more warm fuzzy feelings about these quarterbacks. I've always liked Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, but as somebody who's not necessarily the best judge of quarterback talent, I've been really counting on you all to help me form some better opinions about them. So to hear all of these concerns that you have brought up throughout the show, and then to see some of them on the field this year, yeah, I'm starting to pull the reins back a little bit, and maybe I draft one of these running backs instead. But well, we shall see. My big week 1 loser, our quarterback, was Bo Nix. I think a lot of people would have loved to have had this redemption story for him to where he goes to Oregon after things at Auburn just didn't work out well. But he was the great story at Auburn too. I mean, he was named after Bo Jackson. Auburn. He was born to play quarterback for the Auburn Tigers. His first win in college football was against Oregon in prime time as a freshman, but it just never materialized. He goes down to Georgia, plays his old rival, and I mean, that was a shellacking that he took. And he didn't look good at any point in time. He wasn't making good decisions. You can't blame it on the talent that was around him. He just didn't do smart things with the football in his hand. And it has me really concerned about Oregon going into this year. I think they were the second highest rated Pac-12 team. It's it's really not looking good. Really not looking good. I'm curious to see how long it's going to take Oregon to pull the plug on this and really go with a youth movement there. They have a new coach, so should buy them a little bit more time in terms of like if they have a down year, it's not the end of the world. They can rebound from that. But yeah, I was not impressed with Bo Nix, and I doubt very few people were.
Yeah, I was angry because I love the wide receiver core over there at Oregon and Bo Nix. I mean, you got to give it up for the Georgia defense. We know that they're like an elite unit, but I expected some more out of that team. And yeah, you're right in saying Bo Nix was just looked horrible. He was making mistakes out there. And they have a former, high 4-star recruit in Ty Thompson waiting in the wings there. So I think, after that performance, I don't know how much longer you want to give Bo Nix, but let's get Ty Thompson season started and see how it goes. What's the worst that can really happen at this point?
Honestly, I mean, I know that they have crap. I can't even think of the freshman they have coming in next year. But I know he's one of the top quarterbacks in the class. Son of a gun. I'm going to have to look it up real quick. But I mean, you want to keep your quarterbacks happy. I would much rather have Ty Thompson not enter transfer portal than Bo Nix again. If that's just me. And also, I mean, I think that if you continue to underperform, that does just help you look a little bit better. If you're like, hey, we have this freshman quarterback that we're rolling out there, trying to see what we have. I know college football isn't always about optics, but I mean, it helps at a high profile program like Oregon. Or maybe I've just been stuck in Tennessee too long, and that's all we talk about is optics and how do we make it look like our season's not as bad as it actually was. So we'll see. And I think you have another winner this week.
Yeah, Dante Moore was the quarterback you were trying to think of for
Thank
the
you.
recruit
Thank
next
you.
year. I just want to talk briefly, I guess, about the transfer portal as a winner. I think that this, we could say, was the first full offseason where the portal, there was no exceptions. Everyone got immediate eligibility if it was their first time transfer. And we had some great week one performances from, in Power 5 teams from guys like Jacob Cowing in Arizona, Jalen Berger, Michigan State, Mitchell Tinsley at Penn State. Obviously, transfer guys got the start all over at some blue blood programs with USC. They had Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, Texas, Quinn Ewers. So it was great to see that. There's transfers just making all these teams, playoff hopefuls that are have key guys that were in the transfer portal a few months ago. But I think the other great thing about the transfer portal is some of the lesser name guys who didn't really get a shot at their first school go and make a big impact right away. We saw that with Fresno State wide receiver Nico Remigio took over as a wide receiver one. Jalen Cropper's still there, but Remigio looked a lot better last week. And also Charlie Jones for Purdue exploding as the wide receiver one for Purdue. A lot of people, myself included, thought that Iowa transfer Tyrone Tracy was going to be the wide receiver to have in that Purdue offense, but it ended up being Jones who went crazy with 18 targets for 12 catches, 153 yards and a touchdown. And he played exclusively as the X receiver. I just want to say he's also very old, and I'm talking like Velus Jones old for college. But with production like that in the Big Ten, and we know like Purdue wide receivers tend to get drafted, NFL eyes are gonna see that, and he's gonna end up being on some radars. I grabbed him in some of my campus to campus leagues. Probably overpaid a little bit, but I think he's gonna be worth it for the rest of the season.
Nice. I think the biggest place to see that transfer portal is working, it's giving these guys second chances, was the backyard brawl. I mean, that was also just a fantastic game. But Pitt having Slavis and West Virginia having JT Daniels there, I mean, the former USC quarterbacks were going at it, and that was just a fantastic game. I mean, both of them, they showed that you can go to a high-profile program, try to win that job, and if they wanted you, and you obviously had the talent, but you might not, just gel right. It was great to see those guys getting a second chance. And I mean, really performing. That might be one of the most fun games to watch that wasn't something crazy like App State scoring 40 in the fourth quarter for the year. And that was one of the very first games to kick off for the season. So I thought that was really cool. I think it's at a really nice pace for the rest of the year. If we can expect games like that, that was a lot of fun.
Definitely. Pitt, Kanata Mumfield, wide receiver, also out of the transfer portal.
Oh, shoot.
So,
he's from Akron, right?
Yep, Akron.
Yeah, I think Tennessee was in too. I was kind of bummed to see that happening for Pitt,
especially knowing what's happening.
Yeah, especially knowing what's coming next week. I was a little scared, but hey, Tennessee, we got to see Brew McCoy actually make an impact. Like I said, things weren't very crisp. I love my Vols, so I'm going to keep talking them up because I can. But you just saw this freak athlete out there. Like, he was doing things that there wasn't another wide receiver on the roster for the Vols that can do. Like, I mean, he's just a monster out there. I don't think I had another winner for week one, but I definitely had another loser, and that's Brian Kelly. I mean, that is not the way you want to start off in Baton Rouge. And then also just everything that's going on with the reporting down there. It's just, he's not making a lot of friends in a place where you need to have a lot of friends, especially if you're going to bring a fake accent in there. That's not what you want to see. You already want to be combative with reporters down there, with your players down there, and to lose in just horrible fashion. That's that's not starting off on the right foot. A lot of big things better be happening this year for the Tigers, or else, I mean, they can't get rid of him, but it's not going to be pretty. He's going to be miserable for this 10-year contract because they can't buy him out for a long, long time. I think he will eventually figure it out. He has shown that he's a good coach everywhere he's been, but yeah, not the best of starts, to say the least.
Yeah, I never was like a proponent of that hire to begin with. I think it's great that Ed Orgeron has been coming out on some media outlets right now and saying like he couldn't wait to get out the door after they offered him his buyout. He's like, show me what door to leave. I'm out. And now he's just like, it's Brian Kelly's mess to deal with at this point. So yeah, I feel like Brian Kelly had a good thing going up there in Notre Dame, nice, easy gig. Expectations, weren't that high. He still made the playoff every now and again. Now he's down here. He's going to be under the microscope every single week, and it's starting already. Like, he's lost a game that he probably should have won, and his players are starting to turn against the program. It's those SEC schools, especially the blue bloods like LSU, they don't have patience. So he's going to have to figure it out quick, or he might not make it the whole year,
See, I don't think we're going to get that just because of the contract he has signed.
Yeah,
But, I
right.
mean, LSU theoretically should be the easiest place in college football to win at in terms of the talent that's in the state, your lack of just natural competitors, both in state and in the surrounding area. I mean, everybody's having to come to you to get these great players. It's not like in Florida where you have a bunch of big name colleges there that are all competing over the same people. Plus, Georgia comes in and thins out the herd a little bit before Florida and Florida State and Miami start going after it. I mean, it's really, really tough not to win there, especially also with the money that the boosters have, your facilities, the atmosphere down there. A lot of things have to go wrong for you not to have a good program down there. And we'll really see what all is going on as the year progresses, especially just after what's happened with Les Miles, and then hello, Ron. But we'll also
Go Tigers.
Yeah, go Tigers. We'll move past that. But yeah, a lot of things need to go right this season for the wheels not to just completely fall off. And honestly, we might have another Tennessee on our hands if things don't get fixed real quick. Another Nebraska situation on our hands, to where this former blue blood, always in the thick of it, always competing for national titles, just falls by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way college's football is trending this way is, it seems like a lot of these schools are, falling off, and especially like you could even argue Michigan, are they at the top tier? They were in the playoff last year, but I don't think they are, they're kind of in that same boat where, especially the way the recruiting's been going, they're at risk of just completely falling off too.
I think you have one more loser to go after, and it's a big one. So who was your last loser from week 1?
Yeah, my last loser is the entire Pac-12. And I shouldn't say the entire Pac-12, but the Pac-12 ended up losing, and it was because of those primetime games and some of the games that they played. And it's sad because they really don't need any more negative press after they're losing, kind of their biggest programs to the Big Ten here in a couple of years. But they went out last week and laid an absolute egg. My pick for performance of the week last week, which was Washington State quarterback Cameron Ward, did nothing to show me that they're going to light it up in the NCAA with this new exotic passing offense. He only had 224 yards and 3 touchdowns on 41 attempts. So for those of you without a calculator, that's 5.5 yards per attempt against Idaho, an FCS opponent, a game they only won by 1 touchdown. I think they were favored by like 30. Now they have to go and play Wisconsin next week, arguably one of the best defenses in the country. I wouldn't be surprised if we never mentioned the name Cameron Ward again, honestly. I'm that disappointed in what happened. I think if you have him, it's absolutely a brutal start. For a guy who was getting hyped as like a top 10 quarterback by guys like me. So I try to remind myself it's only one game, but he needs to start throwing the ball downfield if he wants to get any sort of NFL hype. I'm selling Ward if I can at this point. I got him in a few places. I'm hoping that some of my league mates just sort of write that performance off as like week 1 jitters, but it looked bad. And then, the rest of the Pac-12, like what can you even say about Oregon? We already talked about Bo Nix. That was an embarrassment. Like, I picked them to cover that 17-point spread last week because I figured, okay, it's Oregon. They're at least a decent team. It was bad.
Yeah.
And then Utah as well. I know there was kind of a weird, wonky game, and Cam Rising had that strange interception there at the end. But, it's a game that if you're going to, make a statement for the Pac-12, you need to go and beat a middle-of-the-road SEC team in Florida if you're going to say, like, we're the best team in the Pac-12. And they didn't do that. Granted, it was on the road, but it still wasn't a good show for the whole Pac-12.
I couldn't agree with you more. With that, we are going to take another quick break here and show you our clip where we told you what's going to happen with Gabe Davis this week.
If Davis succeeds, I don't know what that says about how good he actually is, but if he flops here, I think that is a really bad mark against Gabriel Davis moving forward.
I'm not going to want to be anywhere near Twitter if Gabriel Davis if Gabe Davis goes off for 4 touchdowns or Gabe Davis has 1 reception for 5 yards, I don't want to be on the internet because it's going to be catastrophic on Twitter.
For our collective sanity, can he please just have like 5 for 68 in an island game, please?
Yeah. I want 5 for 75 and 1. That I feel like 5 for 75 and 1 is like
no, people will ride that.
I just want like a nice 12 points. Just have 6 for 60, Gabe.
Thomas is a liar because he has been all over Twitter about Gabe Davis as this game's been going on. My phone's buzzing because he's all about
I think the best part is like 5 for 75 and 1 might be like spot on. Like he's at 340 for 41 and 1 right now. So we'll see what happens.
Speaking of winners, though, let me tell you how you can be a winner, and that's through Underdog Fantasy. The NFL season is underway, and you can still draft a new fantasy team each week on Underdog Fantasy to win cash prizes. Through their slick mobile app and user-friendly site, you can join a league and draft a team in minutes. Plus, the folks at Underdog are going to help you get started with a deposit match of up to $100 in bonus cash when you sign up and make your first deposit with the promo code Full Tilt. That's right. Full Tilt, one word, all caps. That's us. Get in there. Just visit UnderdogFantasy.com, the App Store, or through the Google Play Store and sign up with the code Full Tilt. And Underdog will double your deposit up to $100. That is a lot of free chances to win money. And each week, the guys are going to be going over their over-unders for the week. Even more chances to win free money. Just put your $100 in, use their $100, start betting on the games with our advice, and just let it stack up. Once again, that's promo code Full Tilt. If you're wanting to get even more info, go to our Discord. It is all over any of our social media. Every single one of our Twitter posts, everything that's on YouTube, all has our Discord link into it. Come in there, chat with us. We're always on it. Every single chance we get, we're responding to people. A lot of the questions are in our Saturday show, the Fantasy Walkabout, which you can find yours truly, Thomas Sipple and Tom Lee on Saturdays. And I mean, everything you could possibly want. Right now, they're doing a watch party for the Rams-Bills game, and it has been an absolute blast. I can't wait to get in it after this show. So once again, Underdog, use promo code Full Tilt and get in our Discord. Whew. All right. Have a fun new segment here this week, and we're calling it Campus Hero to Pro Zero. So before we talk about the player this week, let me tell you a little bit about this. And we are looking at players who they are going to be setting school records. That's that's what they have the ability to do this week. They are going to be remembered on their campus for years. People are going to be telling their grandkids that they got a chance to see this guy in college. But will they be able to translate all of that success into NFL success? Or are they just going to fall by the wayside and only be remembered in that little town? So who do you have for us this week for our campus hero to pro zero?
So this week I'm talking John Reese Plumlee, quarterback out of UCF, who just so happens to be another transfer portal winner. He came from Ole Miss. He played an incredible week 1 against an FCS opponent in South Carolina State. So obviously take his stats with a bit of a grain of salt. But those numbers were great. He had almost 10 yards per attempt. His adjusted completion percentage was over 80%. 4 touchdowns to the air, and added another 122 yards and a touchdown on the ground, and forced 8 missed tackles on only 12 carries, which is just incredible, really. It was shades of his old days at Ole Miss from 3 years ago as a runner anyway, but he definitely looked like a more refined passer. He gets Louisville next week, whose their defense is fresh off giving up 100 yards rushing to the Syracuse QB, Garrett Schrader. And he also had a great game throwing against Louisville. So I fully expect Plumlee to ball out again this weekend. But this is not a pro quarterback. So I mentioned his Ole Miss days when he had a bit of a larger sample size and he was playing against some actual defenses. His yards per attempt was around 6. Adjusted completion percentage was 65%. He still had the rushing upside with over 1,000 yards on the season. But obviously the team felt he was more of a liability, and once Corral got healthy, he ended up being the full-time starter again in 2020 and then in 2021 as well. So I would proceed in caution. You're probably going to hear his name with the term Konami code thrown around in the next week or two. I'm going to hold off final judgment until I see him play some actual defenses. But as of right now, this is a guy, college only in maybe in your campus to Canton leagues, no prospects whatsoever. Wouldn't be drafting him in any sort of Devy format.
I do like the pairing down there for UCF with Gus Malzahn coaching him. He has a very good track record of developing these mobile quarterbacks, or at least getting them to where they are elite college producers. The first one, obviously, that comes to mind, Cam Newton. You can debate who actually has the most to do with his success in college. Especially because I believe Gene Chizik was his head coach at the time, but Gus Malzahn was his offensive coordinator. But I think Nick Marshall's a really good example of maybe the heights that he could possibly reach. Now, I don't see UCF competing for a national championship like they did with Nick Marshall, or at least Auburn did with Nick Marshall. But I think that that's somebody who they remember very much down on the plains, and UCF Golden Knight fans could be remembering him very well too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like UCF, they're a proud G5 school for sure. Like they're one of those schools that typically wins 10 games a season. So I think they're happy to have John Reese Plumlee because they've been on some down years in the last 3 or 4 seasons. So and I think he's going to be great. I think he's a athletic dude. He doesn't have the pro build by any means, but he's going to make some electric plays, which is kind of the spirit of this segment, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we want people who are going to be memorable, and I think he will definitely be memorable for the Golden Knights. So we're going to take one more break before we finish up the show with a preview into week 2. So sit tight, and last clip from last episode for our main station, the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast.
I think that Singletary still has an opportunity to get this role and really keep it throughout the year as they really grind down his contract year. I'm nervous, but I want to see how Singletary performs because he doesn't do anything particularly special, but he doesn't really fuck it up either. So I think watching him on the goal line and how they deploy him on third down is going to really kind of tell their intended use for likely the first quarter of the season is what I'll say. Then the rookie will probably slide a little bit more in. But Devin Singletary, the player that I'm watching for the most on Thursday.
that Bills running game just in general tonight has been it's been interesting to watch, and I want none of it right now. Unless it's Josh Allen, of course. That's the only running game from Buffalo I'm really interested in at this point. But
So
go ahead.
real quick, Singletary, by the way, 6 for 31 and 1 catch for 6 yards. So yeah, a very Singletary game. James Cook, by the way, fumbled on his first carry, hasn't seen the ball since.
That's rough. I just saw they had 2 backs in, and Zach Moss was their back in with Singletary. That
Oof. Yeah.
oh,
And
that hurt.
James Cook was going like 103 in some drafts this season, so you just hate to see it.
And Josh Allen just put out a nasty stiff arm. That's going to be all over Sports Center tomorrow. Holy
Nice.
cow, that was yeah, that's pretty nice. So let's look ahead into week 2, and not near as many big games coming week 2. I think arguably the biggest will probably be Alabama, Texas. I think the biggest ranked game is probably the Pitt Panthers against my Vols. So I might not be able to be seen on the show anymore if Tennessee just gets destroyed. I will be crying for a couple of weeks, but that'll be all right. So looking ahead to week 2, who are some players that you're watching for right now?
The player I'm going to watch on week 1 is Cal's freshman, Jaden Ott, running back. I think he was the breakout freshman of week 1 for me. He ran for 104 yards, 17 carries, forced 7 missed tackles. He also added 2 catches for 26 yards and a touchdown. I added him in the 2 Campus to Canton leagues I had where he was actually still available. He was the other like 8 I'm in, he was already taken. So I probably overpaid on him as well, to be honest, but you never want to miss out on a Power 5 freshman breakout. He's got decent enough size for a freshman, 6 feet, 195 pounds. I kind of expect him to get near 210 by the time he's done with college. My biggest concern last week with him was his lack of escapability in the second level. He only had 18 breakaway yards on 17 attempts. That's really a low number for a 17 attempt game. But he did steal that backfield from the incumbent Damian Moore. But I do wonder if it was due to the level of competition. They played UC Davis and may have been giving Moore kind of a lighter day because of the lesser opponent. So that's why I'm kind of, watching intently this weekend they're going to be playing UNLV. Still not great competition, but better than UC Davis. So I still want to see how that backfield shakes out, but definitely a promising look from Jaden Davis, true freshman. So you'll love to see that.
Very nice. My week 2 player to watch right now is going to be Spencer Rattler. I'm really curious to see what he's going to do as South Carolina plays Arkansas this week. Now, I know that Arkansas was supposed to get beat really bad by Cincinnati if you listen to John Arrington. I'm going to remind people of the take he had where he expected Cincinnati to just embarrass Arkansas in week 1. And they had a lot of opportunities to and just couldn't quite cash in. But yeah, I think it's going to say a lot about not only Rattler and if he has any sort of options left for the pros, and then also what can we expect from South Carolina moving forward? Is Shane Beamer the real deal down there? I don't know. We'll see. We will see. I'm looking forward to it, especially because I'm an SEC elitist, so I only care about SEC football. All other teams become dead to me at some point. So yeah, I'm very excited to see this one.
Yeah, real quick on John Arrington, by the way. First of all, I'm 2-0 on the season for my picks. TCU pulled it out in the second half last week against Colorado. Chandler Morris didn't look good, but thankfully I was right in my assessment that Colorado was terrible, and they proceeded to get outscored 31-7 in the second half, allowing me to get that easy cover. John faltered again with, like you said, the Cincy call. He said they were going to win outright. They couldn't cover that 6.5 point spread, losing to Arkansas. I will say Raheem Sanders, who I've been kind of hesitant on and may have talked some shit about earlier in the season, did look really good with 117 yards. I'm not taking the L on that yet because my guy Dominique Johnson has still not been playing due to injury. So it doesn't count. no L taken for me there. But yeah, sorry, that brings John to 0-2, by the way. So he's not here to miss
Goodness.
on a pick this week, thankfully.
Yeah, it wasn't a banner week for John by any means, but his team did win in what might be their biggest game of the year, especially considering who they're supposed to be realistically. But they have Kentucky this week, and I think that'll be very interesting to watch. Before we wrap up here, I think we have about 5 minutes left in the show before we're at the hour. Let's look at some week 2 college football spreads. Are there any that come to mind for you that you're just really interested in?
Yeah, and I'm going to circle back to Sam Hartman earlier. So he's going to be starting this week. Wake Forest gets Vandy. They're only a 13.5-point favorites on the road to Vanderbilt. I told you I was going to talk shit about Vanderbilt, so here it comes.
Yes.
Mike Wright looked really good against some very bad teams. So don't let the start of the season fool you. They just happened to play arguably the worst team in the FBS in Hawaii. And then they only beat Elon. I didn't even know they had a football team by 11 points. So Wake Forest is going to rally behind Hartman. They're absolutely going to run it up against them. The over-under on that game is a ridiculously high number at 65.5. But Wake Forest might score that by themselves. So lock it in. Wake Forest laying 13.5 on the road, and sprinkle some on the over if you want to have some fun.
All right. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in Iowa versus Iowa State, especially after showing that Iowa just had. We will see if they can pull it out in a battle for the state. I believe they have the Cyhawk Trophy that they're going after. I mean, Iowa State lost a lot of talent, but they still have Matt Campbell, who many regard as a top 10 coach right now in college football. But Iowa, they're a tough program, so we'll see. I believe the spread's 3.5 points, and I like Iowa State there.
And Xavier Hutchinson, who I mentioned earlier in the year, 3 touchdowns last week. Iowa State, lock it in. Drill Brock as well, who we've talked about. He also looked pretty good last week.
And just, I'm going to pick my Vols in the game. Tennessee versus Pittsburgh, 3:30. I do not like that 6-point spread, though, right now. I do not like it. I'm expecting an extremely tight game. So I'm going to pick Pitt to cover the 6 points, but Tennessee to still pull out the win.
Okay. All right. I see. I would lead Tennessee here. I think Tennessee's going to cover the 6 points and get the win. But I don't want to. I don't want to jinx you in any way. But if you want to take Pitt with the points, if you feel like that's going to help your chances, I'm here for you.
Hey, if I lose that one because Tennessee just blew him out of the water, then I'm going to still be happy. And at least I have something to console me if Tennessee gets beat. So right. We will see. It's going to be a lot of fun. As we get out of here, any final thoughts, things that you're looking forward to?
No, I think we covered most of what we're looking forward to. Another week of college football, so I'm definitely not complaining. And NFL this week, so that's great too.
Oh my gosh, we have so much football going on. I mean, we have a game on right now. Buffalo's up 17-10 at the time of this recording. And what seems to have been a pretty good game so far. We're going to have football on tomorrow night, all day on Saturday. Looking forward to seeing Alabama versus Texas. See if Sarkisian's actually the real deal or not. We'll see. I mean, it's tough, but at least Alabama's going to Arlington. So we'll see that. And then finally, the thing we've been waiting for. We have made it to NFL Week 1. I'm so pumped. Any games in the NFL that you're really excited for?
I mean, I got to watch my Packers. So I'm excited to see what happens with that receiving core this year. Is Allen Lazard going to be the guy? I don't know. We'll see.
We will definitely see. And I'm excited for the Russell Wilson era in Denver. Just locked him up to a major contract too. So I hope he's good, because if he's not, I'm going to be a sad man for the next 7 years.
He should be good.
He should be good. I hope to God he's good. But hey, I had a lot of fun filling in for John Arrington. I get to sit in the backstage most of the shows and just listen to you all. I get to learn so much more about the sport that I thought I knew a lot about. I thought I knew a lot about college football until I've been sitting in on this Devy show. I go, wow. I don't know anything at all once you get north of Kentucky. I don't know anything once you get west of the Mississippi. I stay right here in this little niche that I like, that I know. But there's a lot of good stuff going on, a lot of really good players all across the country. It is just a pleasure to listen to you all each week.
Hey, man, I thought you did great, and I was happy to have you fill in. So, yeah, it was a great time.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, we're going to get out of here, though. Just a hair over an hour. Remember, Underdog promo code Full Tilt. They will match up to $100, win you some money. Not only with the money you got from using our promo code, but also from our advice in the Discord. Make sure you get into that Discord. You can hit us up at any time. So much advice, so much good discussion, or so many good discussions going on in there. And there's a lot of fun right now with the watch party for this Rams-Bills game. So make sure you go check that out. Everybody have an awesome weekend. Can't wait to see you until after week 2. Oh, man, I'm hoping I'm a happy Vols fan. I am hoping I'm a happy Vols fan. But we're going to get out of here. Remember, clear eyes, full hearts. Never lose. In your best days, they're always spent tilting. Good night, everybody.